Hello and welcome to today's Research Methodology for Chiropractic class. I'm Heidi Horvick, and today's class is all about how to search the existing literature. Most people might, at most, read the interpretation that someone else has made about a study that pops up on their social media. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is to actually look up the study in question. And not only that, I'd like you to search the literature on that topic, the topic of the study that's popped up that you're interested in, and then read, critique, and summarize the findings of the topic before you comment. So before you just sort of hit like or some angry face or something like that, please don't just follow what someone else has said to be true. Please look it up. I cringe sometimes watching social media and how easily people are just swayed by someone's interpretation about a study without actually having properly read the study. I think it's very, very important as primary healthcare professionals, us chiropractors, that we don't just make flippant comments, that we actually read the true sources first and the surrounding topic before you make comments. So ideally, you wouldn't just follow the flow. Don't just believe what other people tell you. Please be informed before you make a comment, especially out there on the internet. Unless, of course, it's a trusted source that you're listening to, and I get that. If you do hear about a publication from someone else who has actually done the research themselves, and if they've got a PhD and a track record as a scientist, that is different. Because usually they do know what they've studied and what they've investigated. And it's okay to be listening to someone like that. But most people are just picking up on a comment from a friend, and it's just uninformed. It's not a good image for us chiropractors. A PhD, however, or a real scientist, they would have searched and read the literature on the topic before they commented about it, usually. So therefore, in my opinion, their thoughts and reflections are worth more. It's worth your time considering it, at the very least. It's not just an opinion, it's an informed opinion, and that is quite different. But then again, in saying that, I also know of scientists that are highly, highly biased. So you kind of need to take some scientists' opinions with a grain of salt. I would like you to be able to search the literature and find the real research that's been done on any topic that you may be interested in, if there is research on that topic. And that's what today's class is all about. Now, I've had some amazing help with today's class by the awesome Dr. Usman Ghani. So he's helped put most of these PowerPoints together, and he's done a fantastic job. Also, a lot of the online quizzes. So where do we start? We're going to start initially by where to search and also how to come up with the right search terms. So once you have a question, something that you're interested in, where do you go? And also what terms do you put in? What search terms do you use? So we'll talk a bit about how to do that. And then we're going to take a real good look at Google Scholar because it's one of the largest, well, it is the largest search database out there, and it has links to full text articles and to the references and so much more. It's a great tool. I'm on it every day. We'll also go specifically and have a look at the default search settings so that you know what Google Scholar does in the background if you don't enter any particular terms into it. We'll also show you how to refine a search. So if you put in some good search terms that were very relevant for your question that you were interested in, could be a question about a patient, it could be about what intervention is best for this particular condition or this particular set of symptoms, or it could be what other options are there other than chiropractic for this particular patient population that you're interested in helping, or advancing sports performance, or whatever it is. If you've got the question, you've put in some search terms that are very relevant to that question, and you've ended up finding 1,000 articles. Well, you can't read 1,000 articles. So how do you refine or narrow down that search? We'll go into that a little bit, because it's quite good to not just give up, just scroll through the first few out of 1,000 and just give up, because there could be a fantastic article and it's number 800 that you never get to. So how do you narrow it down to get just the relevant papers so that you can see all the relevant papers? That's a very good skill to have. And to do this, we'll show you an example. So we'll do a search for you that gets a lot of hits, and then we'll narrow it down for you to show you how to find the most relevant articles within that search result. We'll then go into how do you interpret your results? What does it mean? Where are the links to the full text articles if they exist? How do you download the references? And so on. We'll also show you a couple of other searching platforms like PubMed and Scopus. They're both great online search platforms. PubMed is a large database. It's also free. Scopus is also very, very good, but you have to pay for it. So We'll still look at it just so that you've seen it, especially if your organisation where you're associated has got access to Scopus. It might be something that you want to use. And then again, as always, we'll do some summaries of today's class and give you some cool take-home messages. As always, we try to provide you with the textbook references that are relevant to this particular online class. For this topic today, I found some interesting chapters in these 3 different textbooks about how to review the literature, and one on selecting a problem and reviewing the research, and then the last one, the literature reviewing and database searching. So they were pretty cool. And here are the most relevant original research resources for today's class. I found quite a few good ones comparing the different databases that you can search. So I thought I'd include them here for you. So when it comes to doing any form of research, the first step of any study is conducting an effective literature search. I mean, it's basically unethical if you haven't done a search, because you're not supposed to redo a study if it's already been done 10 times. I mean, that's just a waste of time, and it's literally known as unethical. It's something that you shouldn't do. You also need to look at what's been done around your topic to properly identify the gaps so that you know exactly what has been done and what hasn't been done and therefore should be done. So in this class, what we'll have a look at is how to search literally for those relevant papers so that you know what research has been done in the area that you're interested in. And how do you extract that kind of information? So we'll go through and hopefully you'll get a good grasp at the end of this how to do these kind of searches, the searching principles and the techniques. They're extremely important skills to have. And it's not just about doing research. I mean, this is also you wanting to find information for a patient coming in to see you in your practice. So how do you find out what are the latest techniques and interventions that could help that person? How do you know how effective they are? How do you know how safe they are? What about the side effects? All of this information you can find from the existing research literature. And if you get good at searching the literature and finding the relevant articles, it will save you a lot of time. Obviously, you can use Kairos Academy. I mean, that's the whole point of Kairos Academy. We do this for you. That's literally what Kairos Academy does. It searches the literature, it summarizes the literature, it critiques all the papers, and then provides you with a more of a lay language translation about the topic. But it could be that one of our classes, 9 months out of date. And so you might still want to have a look at what's the absolute latest. Once you've gone through the Kairos Academy class, you might want to then still find the absolute latest on the topic. And once you have found these articles that you're interested in, again, using Google Scholar, there's links to the papers that are free, and that's called open access. So if there's an open access article or a link to the PDF, to the publication itself, or even just in text, but not necessarily a PDF version, but if you can get access to the full article, the links are provided in Google Scholar. So it's a very good way to find free articles for anyone that can download and read, because the journal articles themselves are owned by the journal in most cases. But as a scientist, if you think that your research study is really relevant to very many people and you want it to be open access, you can pay for that. So you still go through all the rigmarole, all the strict rigors and controls of peer review, but at the end of the day, you can pay for the access for everyone to be able to read it. So we've done that in a few of our articles so that anyone, anywhere can actually read the full paper. So knowing where these links are, that's part of today's class. We'll show you how to get access to these free downloadable papers. So the first question is, where do you search? The first question that anybody asks is, where do you look for relevant research information? And there are many places that you can search. So in today's class, we are going to focus on Google Scholar because it's free and it's extremely large and it's very, very useful. But there are many others. There is PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, Dimensions. There are also full text databases and individual journals, obviously, where all of their publications, usually for a subscription fee, is available for you to read the full papers. There are also other large online libraries, such as the EBSCO Discovery Services, where, again, for a fee, usually an institution pays for this kind of access, you can gain access to a large database of resources. These are basically large repositories of research articles. Sometimes they're referred to as aggregators because they aggregate and collect all the research, blogs, data books into their database so that a researcher or a clinician can find the information by searching on the relevant topics. So finding out what's out there is very important, and there are many places that you can look. So again, I'll just remind you that Kairos Academy is a kind of repository or an aggregator, because we do search, but we also summarize and critique the available evidence, and we translate it into easy to understand language so that you can find out what's out there on the topic, but also find out what's good and not so good, and have it translated into a language that's easy for a chiropractor to understand. So for example, if you're searching on a topic because of a practice member, then Kairos Academy can be very useful by covering that topic, because we have you as a chiropractor in mind thinking about clinical questions. So in that case, it's worth having a look on Kairos Academy to see if we've covered the topic. But it could be that a practice member's come to see you with a very rare condition that we haven't yet done any topic summary on Kairos Academy, in which case then you would need to go and look at the literature yourself. Or it could be that our classes are a little bit out of date, could be a year out of date, in which case you might want to go and do a search in the last couple of years. Is there anything really key that's happened since that last Kairos Academy class was published? So it still can be very, very useful to know how to use Google Scholar to find the latest research on a topic. And I keep talking about a topic because you need to know more than just a single study. Even if you've found a single study that you think is really interesting and you've managed to get hold of the full research article, you need to know what's done around that article. I mean, it's sometimes discussed a little bit in the introduction and the discussion section, but there could be more relevant papers that have been published since that study that you're looking at was published to provide you with more of that background information. You need to look at the whole topic. You can't just make a comment based on a single research article. Usually, it's not a good idea. So in this class, you're going to learn how to search, but what it's really all about is searching to learn. Because through searching, you will learn a lot about a topic. And you also need to know how to extract information once you've figured out what it is that you are searching. So we'll cover some very common databases in this class, and we'll use our own hypothetical example just to show you an example of how this is done. And before we go on, I just want to point out how lucky we are these days, because when I started my research journey back in 1999, it was a whole different ballgame. I vividly remember spending hours and hours at Auckland University Library and Auckland Med School Library, searching on their computers and then trudging down into the archives, going up and down the rows of the journal article volumes, which were these massive, big, fat books, each weighing several kilos, and then carrying a stack of these massive books, which took forever to find, carrying them back up the stairs to the main library area and photocopying page by page each of the articles that I needed. And then finally being able to sit down and read the relevant articles. You'd done a massive workout just finding these papers. And it was an extremely time-consuming task, which now, with a few touches of a button on a computer, you can access all of these articles and more. I mean, times have changed dramatically. I still have so much respect for the old school scientists that had to learn in that way. Anyway, the fascinating thing now, though, is that there's so much good academic material and it's so easily available to us, and it amazes me that it's not used more. People are bombarded with information, and a lot of useless information, a lot of people's opinions, and most never actually bother looking for solid scientific information to back up those opinions or to contradict those opinions. And I think it's a real shame. But I suppose I appreciate this academic information in a very different way, precisely because I've experienced how difficult it was to access it in the past. In the past, again, you had to be a student of a university to access the library. And that's how I ended up bumping into my future PhD supervisor, because I was just studying a few papers at Auckland University because I loved learning, because I loved having access to the library and finding out real truth, in my opinion, scientific truth. Anyway, what I'm hoping to impact on you today is that you now have the world of science at your fingertips. And I want to encourage you to use it. I know it's written in a bit of a strange language, but once you learn it, it's real solid, useful scientific information, as opposed to a whole bunch of opinions that are freely plastered all over social media. And I think as chiropractors, as primary healthcare professionals, it's really important that we access true scientific knowledge and that we are cautious with the claims that we make, and that at least they are in congruence with what the scientific research tells us. Because the world of science contains carefully constructed research studies that provide us with real insights into the world of how chiropractic works. And I'm really hoping to inspire you to take a look for yourself. So first and foremost, we need to define our research question. Or what this means is we need to extract from our research question the real search terms that we need to use if we're going to do a search on, say, Google Scholar. Now, the PICO method is a great place to start, especially if you have a question, a clinical question, about a specific practice member. The PICO method isn't so fantastic if you've got a basic science research question, but anyway, different story. For clinical practice as a chiropractor, if you're practicing evidence-based chiropractic, then the PICO method to define your search terms is fantastic. So PICO stands for patient, intervention, comparison, and outcome. So if you wanted to know about a practice member that had turned up to your practice and they were asking you what's the best thing that can help them with, for example, neck pain. So you could start looking at Chiros Academy, and we've got some good classes on Chiros Academy. We've both got clinical science classes about what are effective ways of helping someone with neck pain and how effective is chiropractic care, how safe is chiropractic care, and also what are other options for someone with neck pain and how effective and safe are they. We also cover several classes on basic science for chiropractors, where we go into what is pain, what is chronic pain, how the brain creates the feelings of pain, and so on. So from a mechanisms point of view, how do you get pain and how do you get out of pain? So they're both very relevant to practice evidence-based practice. You want to talk about both the basic sciences, how things work. Again, there are many classes on how chiropractic works, how the adjustments changes the way the brain perceives what's going on, and so on. So both the basic sciences and the clinical sciences on Chiros Academy would be really relevant place to start. But if you wanted to go deeper and see if there's anything, the absolute latest science, because our class could have been a little bit out of date by the time you're wanting to do this search, then it's still a good idea to know how to search it on Google Scholar. And you can even tick just in the last few years. So you can see if there's anything that's been published since we've done our Chiros Academy classes on the particular topic. So then it's good to start with this PICO method. So for each of these, you come up with 4 search terms or more based on these 4 letters. So the patient, the innovation, the comparison, and the outcome. In this case, what's the patient? Well, the patient is patients with neck pain, right? And then you might have, well, what is the intervention? Well, maybe you wanted to specifically know about adjustments. So you might have spinal adjustment, or you might have chiropractic adjustment. Again, your population, your patients, you might want to narrow it down to adults. This was an adult patient that came in with neck pain. You then want to look at the outcome. So what's the outcome? What are we wanting to get out of this? We want a reduction of the neck pain, right? And then the comparison, you wanted to maybe compare it to usual care. So that's what the comparison can be. So now you've extracted some good key terms. You've got adults, neck pain, spinal adjustment, chiropractic adjustment. You've got usual care. You've got a reduction of neck pain. They would be all the key terms that you want to use in your search to be able to address this question. What else or what can help patients with neck pain other than chiropractic? So this PICO model is really useful when conducting a literature search, especially for these kinds of clinical research questions. So if, for example, your question is more about mechanisms or basic science, then the PICO method is not as useful. But that's okay. I mean, you can still come up with really good basic science research questions. But for these clinical research questions, practice research questions about patients and health outcomes and interventions, then the PICO method is very, very good and effective way of coming up with these key search terms very quickly. Now, once you have your key search terms, then you need to go to and find a place where you can enter these key search terms. And before we have a look at those, I just want to mention these Boolean operators. Because now that you have your terms, there's also ways that you can combine these terms with what's known as Boolean operators. So Boolean operators are simple words such as and, or, and not, and that are used in a search engine, such as Google Scholar, to help you combine your key search words and to exclude others. Okay? So if you put pain and adults, then your search will look for studies that have both of the terms in them. If, on the other hand, you typed in pain or adults, you would get studies that has either pain or adults. So you wouldn't get necessarily articles that had both of them. And if you put in pain, not adults, this gives you studies that contain the search term pain, but it excludes any article that has pain and the term adult in them. So for this class, we're going to talk mainly about and or, and we're going to look at how the different search engines like Google Scholar, what is their natural default, and there's also ways that you can combine these in advanced searches. So we'll have a look at how you do all of this, and I'll show you examples. But before we get into that, just pause and test yourself on what we've just covered.